So under 10 mistakes that too many pre-retirees and retirees are making. I'll hit number one. Yelisey, I'll let you take the next one. Number one is carrying debt into retirement. So one of the biggest issues that you might be thinking is, man, we got to get these credit cards paid off. We got to get the car paid off. It'd be really nice to be mortgage free in retirement. Can we double up those payments? Can we knock it out or at least reduce it significantly? One of the things that I've found is a lot of people are not aware that their credit cards interest rate is somewhere between 19 and 29%, almost always. So one of the things is can we knock off some of those, some of that bad debt that, you're right, paying such a high interest rate and you're throwing away so much money. And, I don't know about you, Yelisey, you've probably never done this because the systems that you have in place, but when Steph and I first got married, I'll never forget, we bought a couch on a 0 interest credit card, and we made payments every single month. And I handed it off to my wife, and I said, "Hey, why don't you handle this? We'll put it in your name, build your credit." And,
no, I've never done anything like that.
And I'll never forget because we're sitting on the couch one night, and she goes, "Oh no!" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "We missed the 12 months of free interest. It's the 13th month." And they added all the interest back. I think it was at like 9%. So it wasn't insane, but it's like, man, here we spent, I don't know what it was, like $1,200 on interest or something like that. That had we just realized that we were within a few days of losing, the interest-free time period, we wouldn't have had that. So, one of the things is people are busy. People have a lot on their plate. And I would say a lot of the people that we sit down with, when I ask them, what's your interest rate on that credit card? They don't know. So one of those strategies is maybe using a HELOC. Maybe you've got an equity line of credit off of your home equity line of credit, and that might be at 4 or 5 or 6%. Maybe you roll your credit card debt onto that while we build a 12 or 18 month timeline to get you debt free. Maybe you have a car payment and you realize, hey, right now the average car payment in the United States is like, I heard it's like $750, something crazy. But it's like, hey, what if we get that paid off so that in retirement, when your paycheck stops and now you're just living on Social Security, maybe you have a pension, personal savings, now you don't have to draw as heavy on those assets that you've spent all this time building up. So, one of the things we found is a lot of the happiest families that we serve, they go into retirement debt-free or at least having all of the bad debt paid off.
Yeah, I think that's important to distinguish, like the good debt from the bad debt. Debt's just been a big issue just in general. I was looking at some of the numbers from the survey of consumer finances, and they said that debt for those under the age of 65 has actually doubled from 1992 to 2022, which that's not really concerning because it's in line with inflation. But what is concerning is for the people that we actually serve. So they also included a number for those between the age of 65 and 74. And for that segment of the population, debt has more than quadrupled. So they're overrepresented in terms of the amount of debt that they have, which is crazy because that's the people who typically want to have the least amount of debt as they're approaching retirement. So that was kind of interesting. And of course, credit card debt is a big one too. So for those that are 70 and older, mortgages are actually what account for about 2/3 of the debt for those kind of in their late 60s and 70s, which is kind of, one of those things where in the past, people would say, hey, hang on to your mortgage. You can write off the interest. But now with the standard deduction being as high as it is, typically that interest rate deduction, unless you have enough itemized deductions, it's really not going to help you all that much.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it comes down to this is there's not a right or a wrong decision depending on what you value the most. So, almost every week, one of the families that we serve, they'll call me and they'll say, hey, we owe $80,000 on the house, or we owe $150,000 on the house. We have $300,000 sitting in checking, savings, CDs. Should we pay it off or should we just keep paying the mortgage? And what I'll say to them is, if you have that $300,000 sitting in a savings account that's making 4 to 4.5 and your interest rate is 4 to 4.5, I would pay it off. Yeah. But if you have an interest rate at 2.5 to 3% or maybe 2%, and that money's in the market and it's averaging 7, 8, 9, 10%, in my opinion, why not continue to keep the mortgage, make money on your money while you make those payments at 2%? So what it comes down to is a lot of people say, that just makes math sense, right? That's just on paper. If I'm making 8%, my interest rate is 2.5%, I'm going to keep paying the mortgage every month. But then we have families that say, you know what? I know I'm giving up 5 or a 6% return on that money, but I'm going to sleep better knowing that the mortgage is paid off. So I'm going to pay it off anyways. That's just an intentional decision that peace of mind matters more than the interest that you're making. And neither of those are right or wrong. It just depends on what your priorities are.